My name is Tasha, and I'll tell you about how my world used to be before everything went completely upside down. Back when it was just Dad, Mom, and me, we lived in a large old house with more rooms than I bothered to count. It was a calm place, where laughter flourished. At a family dinner, my dad revealed that he had been sending me $3,000 a month, but I hadn't seen a dime. Mom was the center of our home. She would wake up singing, and her voice would float up the stairs. Tasha, on the other hand, would rise and shine, sweetheart. I dragged myself out of bed and complained like any teenager would, but her bright smile over pancakes made it worth it. Dad, on the other hand, was the cool one. He was always prepared with a joke to lighten the mood. In my younger years, when I was your age, I believed that I could take over the world with just a guitar and a bad haircut. He would say this, and we would laugh because we knew that he had done just fine with a business suit and a level head. Instead, life was great. In fact, it was perfect. But as they say, everything good ends too soon. When Mom became ill, it was as if our little paradise had begun. She told us, "I have some tough news," while sitting in the living room with the TV on but no one else watching. Her voice was steady, but her eyes showed that she was afraid of cancer. The word hit me like a ton of bricks, and her dad reached for her hand. They exchanged a look and a silent vow that they would fight it together. The months that followed were difficult hospital treatments. The day we lost her, everything changed for Dad and me. We tried to cling to each other to keep the pieces of our broken family together. But we'll get through this, Tasha. Mom joked about saving money on shampoo in an attempt to make things easier for us, but I saw the tears she thought she was hiding, and heard the worry in Dad's whispers when he thought I was asleep. Would say that his voice was rough and that the bags under his eyes were getting darker every day. A year later, Dad brought a new person into our home, Victoria, who was like a whirlwind, taking over everything Mom had left behind with her sharp clothes and flawless hair. When I first met her, she gave me a glance and a smirk on her lips, as if she'd already figured me out. "George tells me that you're a good student and that you won't mind helping out more around here now that I'm taking care of things." I remember feeling my fists clench at my sides as I helped out. This wasn't some boot camp she could run, but for the sake of my dad, I bit my tongue, sure I could do more. Dad seemed to get smaller every day. The new house was twice as big as our old one, and with that came twice as much work. On the first day we moved in, Victoria was already giving orders, her high heels clicking menacingly on the marble floor as she guided the movers after they had left. His laughter was not loud, and his stories were not as frequent, but he was trying for what he called moving forward. I leaned against the doorframe and watched her get it. I muttered, already dreading the long list of chores I knew she would pile on me, and dinner should be ready by 6 guys every evening. "I assume you can handle that?" She looked at me. "Tasha, I expect you to take care of your own space. I won't have time to clean up after you." Dad was out a lot trying to keep his business afloat, so I was left alone with Victoria and her never-ending list of demands. The living room is dusty, the silver isn't polished, and Tasha isn't doing her share of the dry cleaning. As the days stretched into weeks, the house felt less like home and more like a fancy prison. Finally, one afternoon, Dad found me in the garden, pulling weeds with more force than necessary. "Hey, Tasha, you've been quiet lately. Everything is fine." I threw a bunch of weeds in the trash, wiping the perspiration from my brow. "I'm just tired, Dad. This place is a lot to keep up with." He looked around, his expression growing thoughtful. "Yes, it's a lot for anyone. Perhaps I can speak with Victoria to see if Dad's face hardened a little, something I hadn't seen in a long time. But that's not what I intended when we moved here. I'll handle it, Tasha. You shouldn't have to bear all this burden." Despite his good intentions, his conversations with Victoria seemed to go in one ear and out the other. I nearly laughed, but good luck with that. She believes I'm her maid. She gave me that tight-lipped smile, and then it was back to business as usual. "Tasha, the guest rooms need new linens, the hedges are overgrown," and it was exhausting to try to meet her standards. But it also made me stubborn. I wasn't going to let her break me, so I kept my head down, worked, and counted down the days until I could leave for college. The day finally arrived when I was leaving for a place where my stepmother's voice couldn't reach me, a city miles away where I could start over, and I packed up early that morning, each suitcase feeling like a brick in the new foundation I was laying for myself, Dad. Finding my own space where no one could tell me how to mop a floor or when dinner should be on the table kept me going. Came out to see me, trying to smile, but I could tell he was upset about it. "Tasha, are you sure you have everything you need?" Dad asked, surveying the stack of boxes and bags. "You'll call if you need anything, and when you get there, check your account. The money for your books and rent will be there. Don't worry, I'll be all right. I'm just heading to college, not Mars." I tried to keep it light to make this easier for him, but my own heart was pounding. Living alone was as liberating as I had imagined, and even though my apartment was small, I had my own space with no one to report to or tell me to clean up. My classes were challenging, but I was tougher and determined to study as much as I could. I quickly discovered that living on a tight budget wasn't as simple as I had assumed. I was constantly thinking about money, so I didn't go out much and didn't see the point in blowing money on parties when I had a goal in mind. Instead, I took a part-time job at a nearby cafe. It wasn't glamorous, but it was money, and every little bit helped one evening. Mike, my coworker, noticed me counting my tips for the third time. He leaned against the counter and smirked. "What are you trying to do by staring at those bills?" I rolled my eyes. "You're trying to make those bills multiply by staring at them?" I rolled my eyes. "You're trying to shove the cash into my wallet or just make sure I got everything?" Mike laughed and pulled off his apron as he was about to close up. "You know, you could ease up a bit. Come, we're just going out for a drink tonight to relax." I was tempted, but I'm afraid I can't save every penny I make. Perhaps the next time I'm here, I'll be able to build a future where I won't need anyone. Victoria, or else I want to save enough to buy Dad a nice gift to let him know how much I appreciate everything he's done. Just when I thought I had my college life figured out, everything started to fall apart. It started with a call that I never expected to receive. Victoria was on the other end, and her cool, detached voice broke the news that would completely upend my world. "Tasha, your father is going through a difficult financial time," she said, without showing any sympathy. "We're tightening belts around." I was shocked to learn that my situation was slowly becoming real. No more money meant no more apartment on my own, no more safety net, and that I needed to act quickly. I told Jenny, my college friend and classmate, about it, and she was as understanding as they come. "Unfortunately, this means we can't send you money for your rent anymore," she offered while we were studying in the library. Moving in with Jenny was a breath of fresh air during a suffocating time. We shared costs, which made life somewhat more manageable. She was always willing to help or listen. "Whatever you needed. More." "Tasha, that's terrible. Look, why don't you move in with me? We could split the rent, and it'll be cheaper for both of us." 6 months later, Victoria sent me a message on social media saying, "No more money for tuition either. Your father's situation hasn't improved. You need to stand on your own." As I read those words, I felt a mixture of anger and despair because my savings were, at best, completely consumed by bills and necessities. So I further reduced my spending, cut back on everything unnecessary, especially food, and my meals became smaller and more focused on survival than enjoyment. My clothes also began to hang looser on my body, and one evening Jenny knocked on my door with grocery bags in her arms. She must have noticed that I had lost weight because she said, "Hey, I picked up some extra stuff and made too much dinner too. You should come eat with us." I felt the warmth of the light. My stomach rumbled as I smelled the food coming from the kitchen, but I shook my head and said, "Thanks, Jen, but I can't. I need to save every penny I've got to pay for tuition somehow." Jenny scowled and set her jaw stubbornly, saying, "Tasha, you need to eat. And you're not paying for this, okay? It's just leftovers." I wanted to argue to keep the thread of independence I was. As the semester went on, I threw myself into my studies with even more fervor if that was possible, because the only way out of this financial mess was through scholarships, and I wasn't about to let anything jeopardize that. Jenny frequently tried to persuade me to take breaks, go to parties, or just hang out, but another growl from my stomach betrayed me. "So maybe just a little thanks, Jen." Jenny protested that it was obvious that relaxing didn't pay the bills, so I curtly replied, "Come on, Tasha, you can't study all the time. Come out with us tonight, it'll be fun, and you need a break." I kept saying, "I can't, Jen. I need to ace these exams, but you're always working or studying. When do you ever relax?" I kept my eyes on my books the entire time. Pressure increased, and my body started to feel the strain. Long work days and longer study sessions left me exhausted and running on fumes, but I couldn't stop. Not when my future depended on it or when I was so close to receiving that scholarship. The shift at the diner had gone on forever, and by the time I clocked out, the sun had already begun to paint the sky with streaks of classes waited for no one, and I had a midterm to prepare for before dragging my feet to my apartment. I had intended to take a quick shower and go straight to campus, but as I reached for my keys, a wave of dizziness overcame me, making the world spin wildly, and the ground seemed to rush up to meet me. Orange and pink exhausted didn't even begin to describe how I felt. I woke up with a start, the sterile smell of antiseptic filling my nostrils, and I blinked against the harsh fluorescent lights. I was in a hospital bed with 4 drips attached to my arm, and Jenny was sitting next to me. Her expression was a mixture of relief and concern. "Tasha, you're awake. God, you scared me. I found you. Passed out outside your apartment," Jenny said in a shaky voice. "You collapsed." "Tasha," the doctor said, "you're heavily malnourished and dehydrated. You've been pushing yourself too hard. You need to rest." Rest was a luxury I couldn't afford. Not now. Not with everything hanging by a thread. But arguing felt like running a marathon. And after a couple of days, my body was weak, but my mind was racing with everything I needed to catch up on. After being discharged with strict instructions to take it easy, instructions that might as well have been written in sand for all the good they did, I tried calling my dad because I needed to hear his voice to let him know what had happened, and perhaps he could help. But the calls. When I dialed Victoria's number, she answered on the 3rd ring and said, "Yes, it's Tasha." I started, but she abruptly interrupted, saying, tangled up thick with emotions I couldn't control, "Your father is out of the country on business." Before you could ask, "No, we can't help. You're on your own," Her words struck like a slap. But there was nothing else to talk about, Tasha. You're an adult, so deal with it. The line died, leaving a ringing silence behind it. I sat there with my phone in hand, the weight of her dismissal crushing. It was then, in that quiet apartment, that I realized how alone I was, with exams looming over me like dark clouds ready to burst. The stress was the last Dr. DRS was sitting across from Jenny in the small diner we frequented. I fiddled with the edge of the menu, my stomach growling, but my wallet was painfully thin. A tangible thing was wrapping its fingers around my throat, making it difficult for me to breathe and keep up with my studies. I had no choice but to let go of one of my jobs' money, which had already started as a trickle. Jenny's voice was firm but gentle as she tried to be supportive, but accepting help never got easier. I muttered, feeling the weight of every word. Stop looking at the prices, Tasha. I've got this, okay? Jenny rolled her eyes and smiled, saying, yeah, just order something hearty. You looked like you could use it, so I ordered. The cheapest meal made my pride hurt every time I spoke, but Jenny was right. I needed the energy, especially now that the tests were coming up one after the other. I gave them everything I had, and nights turned into days, with notes and textbooks, strewn all over the place like a fortress. When the results came in, I was shocked to see 2 tuition bonuses and a small but important light. I should have been ecstatic at the end of a very long time, but all I could do was fall asleep, my body and mind shutting down from sheer exhaustion. I slept for days, missing messages and calls, and the world went on without me. One night, while I was alone in my tiny apartment, I dreamed of my mother. She was in our old kitchen, humming a tune, her smile warm and inviting. Tasha, to come here, sweetie. She described her voice as a gentle echo of better times in my dream. I went to her hoping to feel safe and at home, but as dreams come to an eye, I woke up crying with a sharp, intense pain in my chest. The emptiness of the situation was oppressive, and I felt compelled to make a decision that felt like I was going home for a few days because I wasn't used to them or anyone else in my current state. Feeling desperate, but necessary, I would return to my hometown, visit her grave, and perhaps even find some of the peace I saw in my dream. I checked my bank account to see how much I could afford, and the cheapest bus ticket I could find allowed the company to function without me for a few days. I told her over the phone about the days, and my voice was steadier than I felt at home. There was a pause, and I could imagine her furrowing her brow in concern. Are you sure that's a good idea? Okay, but call me all right anytime, day or night. Promise? Promise? I said, feeling threatened by her worry. The trip back was a blur, and as the bus rolled into my heart skipped a beat when I saw a figure in the distance with a familiar stoop of the shoulders kneeling by a grave. It was supposed to be a simple visit, a chance to feel close to Mom, again, but as I walked among the amber gravestones, a mixture of dread and longing settled in my stomach. My pace accelerated, my disbelief and hope churning. The moment the figure turned and our eyes met, there was a moment of confusion followed by recognition and what appeared to be a great deal of sorrow. Tasha's voice broke raw with emotion. It had been so long that I ran to him, not caring about the cold or the tears that had begun to fall. Why are you here? He got up quickly, almost tripping, and embraced me. I felt like I was 5 years old, again, safe and loved. He admitted that I had a dream about your mother, and he pulled back just enough to see my face. She told me to come here today, and I gasped. The parallel was too sharp to ignore. I also had a dream about her, which is why I'm here, Dad. Tears with an old handkerchief, rough and a little frayed, seemed to still be watching out for us. I agreed, and my laughter mixed with my tears. Dad suggested that we talk to Tasha and that she should return to the house with me. His tone was cautious but hopeful, and I hesitated as I thought about Victoria's cold stares. Are you sure she'll handle it? You're my daughter, and we. The ride to the house was awkward but reassuring, and when we got there, Victoria was in the front yard printing roses with sharp snippets that seemed to echo her mood. Tasha, what are you doing here? She stood up straight, her eyes narrowing as she took in my presence. I stepped forward. I had a lot to catch up on. His voice held a firmness I hadn't heard in a long time. I came to see Dad because we had some things to discuss. He nodded at Victoria, saying, "Why don't you make us some dinner? We'll be inside." Her mouth tightened, but she nodded rigidly and went inside. Dad then led me into the living room, which used to feel cozy but now seemed to have been designed more for appearance than comfort. The tension in the dining room was high, sufficient to slit with a knife. Victoria, who appeared paler than normal, was arguing about going out on an urgent errand when her father's voice interrupted her. "Sit down. We're not done here," she said coldly, and Victoria sat with her hands twitching uneasily in her lap. Dad turned to face me, his brow furrowed in concern. "Tasha, you've lost so much. Are you on some sort of diet?" I shook my mother. I've been struggling to make ends meet because I've been paying for my tuition and all of my living expenses on my own, so his confusion was evident. What are you talking about? I've been sending $33,000 every month to cover your expenses, and it's always automatically deposited into your account on the 15th. Looked at him in shock, thinking, Dad, I haven't seen a dime of that money for the last 2 years. I've been working 2 jobs just to pay my bills and tuition. Dad's face went pale as he turned to face Victoria, asking, Is this true? Victoria suddenly got up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. I needed it, Dad said in a low growl. Tell me everything. But she paused and then revealed that I had become entangled in a financial pyramid scheme. I believed that I could quickly turn our financial difficulties around, but I ended up in debt, and the people I dealt with are not the type to refuse. I paid them off using Tasha's money, believing that I could replace it before anyone noticed. That Dad's hands were Victoria's whimper. Her usual composure shattered, and Dad said firmly, Standing up, and we're done here. I want a divorce. After Victoria hurriedly packed some belongings and left, Dad turned to me, his eyes filled with sorrow. You endangered my daughter's health and education over a get-rich-quick scam, and you kept this from me. I didn't know what to do. I'm so sorry, Tasha. I had no idea that I would be handling your money directly from now on. I managed to smile a little. Dad, I recently received a scholarship, and his eyes lit up with pride instead of anger because my girl always makes me proud. However, you deserve a break. How about taking a real vacation by the sea? You deserve it. And it was like a dream. Blue sky eyes, golden beaches, and the calming sound of waves. It was an opportunity to rejuvenate and put the pain and struggles behind me. I returned to school with newfound vigor, ready to take on my studies with newfound zeal. I continued to work part-time, not out of necessity, but to save money for a special gift for Dad as a way to say thank you for everything. Despite the difficulties, challenges, I found myself going to parties with friends and letting myself enjoy life instead of just enduring it. Jenny mentioned one night as I was getting ready. Yeah, trying to find a balance. I guess I'm learning it's okay to have a little fun, I responded, adjusting my earrings. Just don't forget about us when you're famous, making a joke about throwing a cushion at me. When I glanced in the mirror, I saw a reflection of someone who had weathered a storm and come out stronger. I was still cautious with money, but I never laughed and felt lighter than I had in years. It can be challenging to break certain habits, but now it was not desperate, but rather the result of a wish to create a future. I chose at last, the future appeared bright.